SEC Power Rankings are live and up on offthehooksports.com. Check that out each and every week, brought to you by Caleb Calhoun. And one thing we do want to touch base on, and that is Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. So we'll get to that, but we look at top the rankings. Georgia number 1, no surprise. Alabama number 2, no surprise. Then you have number 3, Missouri over Ole Miss after Missouri beats Tennessee. Whoa, what? Is Missouri really the 3rd best team in the SEC, Caleb? Really?
Well, Ole Miss beat LSU 52-49, which is Ole Miss's best win. Missouri beat Tennessee 36-7 in an absolute obliteration. You got to give Missouri some credit for that. They played Georgia tight. Oh, they were a bad interception away from maybe even beating Georgia on the road a week ago. So, Dave, they're rolling right now. Your least favorite program in the SEC looks like the Gary Pinkel Missouri days in the 2013-2014 years.
Boy, that whole game looked like a fiasco disaster on Saturday. I mean, how did you notice how the M, they block it off so that you can't sit in the one end zone where
sense.
The white M is? What for Missouri? Well, that means that nobody wants those seats. They would pull that M up in a heartbeat and put seats there, but nobody wants to sit there. And I noticed that the stadium wasn't built north-south, that it was built going east-west, which means one side you're going into the sun, which is incredibly stupid. Just that whole program just needs to go away. All right, Ole Miss, number 4, LSU's number 5, Auburn, number 6, and then Tennessee at number 7. If Tennessee ends the season as the 7th best team in the nation, should Tennessee fans be disappointed? Or 7th best team in the conference, excuse me.
I was going to say 7th best team in the nation. No, they shouldn't. But yes, if they end the season as the 7th best team in the conference, they should be disappointed. But the controversial one to many will be Auburn over Tennessee. But I mean, again, given how bad Tennessee played on a neutral field, maybe I was overreacting because I still think Tennessee would be favored over Auburn right now. But I mean, you can't ignore what happened over the weekend, can you? With how bad Tennessee played.
No, and no, when I look at Tennessee and their program, I think they're more along who would you take as a program over them right now in the SEC? Georgia and Alabama for sure. I think everybody else is debatable given their head coaching situation.
I still would take LSU as a program long term, just
with
because
Brian Kelly.
LSU. Yeah, with Brian Kelly.
Yeah, more in-state talent. I can see that. Okay, so Texas A&M, by the way, comes in on this list of our SEC Power Rankings at number 8. If you're Texas A&M, are you interested in Josh Heupel? Because they've decided to jettison Jimbo Fisher, and he walks away with $78 million. Are you interested in Josh Heupel? That's the question I pose to you if you're Texas A&M.
Yes, but if you're Texas A&M, do you shoot your shot again? Do you think shooting their shot with Jimbo Fisher was the problem, or do you think it was just that they shot their shot on the wrong person?
Who do you shoot your shot with? That's
Belichick's about to get fired by the Patriots.
Yeah, and let me clarify. Caleb's talking about a splash hire where you win the press conference, which Texas A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. They were supposed to win 2 or 3 national titles under Jimbo Fisher. They won the press conference. That doesn't mean a lot in retrospect. So you're talking about a big name, an Urban Meyer, that type of guy. Or do you go with an up-and-comer that Tennessee has with Josh Heupel or hired with Josh Heupel? I think he's a little bit more established right now than an up-and-comer. But when they hired him from Central Florida, he would have to be deemed as an up-and-comer. Well, I think if you're A&M, you had this massive buyout to pay. Now, money's not going to be a factor. They've got as much money at Texas A&M as they do anywhere in the nation. But I think I would try, instead of shooting my shot with an Urban Meyer or Bill Belichick if he gets fired at the Patriots, with a big monster name like Jimbo Fisher was, I think I'd do my proper research and find the best coach that is under 45 years old and try to grow with him for the next 10 years. That is the approach that I would take. And I would say this too. With Texas A&M, if I were their athletic director, here's how I would handle this. I would go to an outside search party, which a lot of people knock because they're like, oh, you should know it yourself. You should know what coach you want to hire. I would go with a search party because you're ahead of the game. You're going to be able to extend one of the first offers because you made a move in November instead of early December. And the other reason I would hire a search firm is there are a lot of voices inside that of athletic director or that athletic department and that have money and they want to have their say. If I'm the athletic director, I want to say, this is who the coaching search recommended. And that's who I went with. I think if I'm the athletic director, I'm covering my own rear end a little bit as well. What about you, Caleb? Do you think they'll go for the splash hire? Do you think they'll go for a proven yet still potential unfulfilled coach like Josh Heupel, or do you think they'll go with a young up and comer? There's kind of three levels. I think Josh Heupel fits the middle one. You?
I think it's the middle one, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. One, we've discussed, Dave, in an age of NIL, this Jimbo Fisher hire, this contract does not happen in an NIL era. You and I both agree, right? Because they're like, hey, save that money so we can buy some talent on our team. And if you're Texas A&M, they can buy a lot of talent. Here's why you go for the middle hire. Texas A&M, with the right coach, look at the roster. If everybody stays, they could win a national championship next year, couldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
If you get the right coach, they could win a national title next year. Look for the coach that's done great with the talent he's had. That is a Josh Heupel. That is a Mike Elko at Duke. That is, if I'm Texas A&M, I'm on the phone with Lane Kiffin right now. I know that's crazy, but Lane Kiffin at A&M, I would have them winning a national championship next year if Lane Kiffin was at Texas A&M.
Okay,
I trust him that much as a coach.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Josh Heupel even on the list of top 5 coaches that they would call? Because I think Elko is going to be the guy that they target, who's been a defensive coordinator at A&M. So let's include him in the top 5, right? You'd be crazy not to have that on your list. Lane Kiffin's debatable because I think you get some baggage with Lane. But
who cares? You're Texas A&M.
I know he would be on my top 5. So this is our top 5, Caleb. This is not the real top 5. Is Josh Heupel, does he make the top 5 just off the top of your head?
Yeah, he does. I'll just go there. I'll go Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, Mike Elko, Dan Lanning, and that's just 4 I named right off the bat. Oh, and the guy at Michigan, Sharon Moore, who had just coached a heck of a game against Penn State as an interim head coach on Saturday. Michigan didn't start going to the college football playoff until Sharon Moore took over as offensive coordinator. That stands out to me in a big way. And he's a offensive line coach to become an offensive coordinator, which typically, Dave, you know this, former line coaches who are offensive coordinators, Philip Fulmer, they like to run a pro-style offense. I think Texas A&M is best running a pro-style offense with their talent. They don't have to run a gimmicky offense at all.
Here's the other thing that's scary about if they went the Lane Kiffin route. Lane Kiffin wants to pride himself in being the NIL guy, but Ole Miss doesn't have the money. So if he went to A&M, the money would not be an issue. I mean, Lane Kiffin to A&M could be scary, like for the next 10 years.
That would be very, very scary. Yes, Lane Kiffin to A&M. I'd have a couple of national. Look, people, you know when you know a college football fan is not smart, Dave? Can I just say this right off the bat? I'm going to accuse people in college. You know when you know you're not smart if you're a college football fan? When you think a program's history has anything to do with whether or not it has the resources to be successful. So if you use Texas A&M's history to prove that they can't win a championship, you're not a smart college football fan. I don't care about the history. I care about the resources and what they have now. They're in Texas. They got a top 5 NIL initiative. They got money out the wazoo. Dave, you and I know just because they haven't won doesn't mean they're not capable of winning, right? I mean, and Josh Pate, our guy, brought this up. He said, didn't people say the same thing about Georgia for 40 years before Kirby Smart? They're like, well, they can't win. And then Kirby Smart got there, and what did he do? 2 national titles. And
let me give you some stats as why they should call Josh Heupel, why he should be on their radar. The number of weeks in the top 15. Derek Dooley, 0 in 36 games. Highest ranked program, got to 23rd. Butch Jones, 6 weeks in the top 15. Highest ranked was number 9. That was out of 61 games. Jeremy Pruitt, 2 weeks in the top 15. Highest was 14th, and that was out of 35 games. Josh Heupel, 18 weeks in the top 15 amongst 35 games. The highest rank, number 1. So if you look at the previous 3 coaches, and absolutely, I do not want to see Josh Heupel leave. We got that on the message board. I think that would be horrendous. No, I do not want to see that. But if I'm A&M, as a matter of fact, the reason I'm making this argument is I believe so much in Josh Heupel still, despite some missteps along the way. He should be on A&M's top 5 list. He should be on A&M's or any top program's top 5 list. I don't think anything changes after Saturday. That's the point I was trying to drive home. Maybe I missed it. But Caleb, yes, I still think he's one of the best offensive minds in the game. I think he gets stubborn with personnel, but that's something that you hopefully grow through. So no question he should be on the top 5 list.
Yeah, he absolutely should. And the other thing that Texas A&M needs to be clear, here's a crazy thing I want to say, Dave, because you covered it for years. I have covered it to a lesser degree, but not as much as you have. Don't hire a guy for his ability to recruit. You're in an NIL age and being in Texas, you don't need a recruiter.
Well, even at Tennessee, I mean, the top 15 or so programs in the nation, you and I could go out there and get a top 25 class. The question is, can you get a top 5 class? And the only guys that have proven they can do that on a consistent basis have jobs that they're not leaving anytime soon. And I'm talking about the Nick Sabans of the world and the Kirby Smarts of the world, the Ryan Days of the world. So they're really not approachable. So you're right. Don't hire somebody based off their ability to recruit. I'll tell you what would be my number 1 criteria for any coach, that if I'm Texas A&M or Tennessee or whoever, that the number 1 criteria would be having a really good offensive mind. So I think that puts Josh Heupel ahead of the curve for a really good defensive-minded coach. Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. State Farm agent Don Self and his team take customer service seriously. For well over 40 years, they built their business and reputation on taking care of their customers in Collegedale and Ooltewah as part of the greater Chattanooga area. Don and his team pride themselves on making sure you and your family won't have any surprises at the time of your claim. That's Don Self, home and business, family as well. Your friendly neighborhood State Farm agent for the greater Chattanooga area, Don Self State Farm. So what would be the number 1 criteria on your list if you're A&M or anybody else that's one of the best programs in the nation, top 15, and you're looking for a coach? Mine is be a bright offensive mind. What would be your number 1 criteria?
You are going to die laughing when I tell you this, Dave. My number 1 criteria, I would call professors from the classes they took in college and ask, how smart are they? Period in the story. Because I think that's the biggest. Yeah, one of my tests, you know what I would do? I just play them. I would play like 10 games against them in NCAA football and see how smart they are at actually like reading defenses and calling plays. And that would be pretty much where I'd go. I think intelligence means more than we so overlook it with head coaches. And so I'm just going to, no, how good were you in class? Can you pass an IQ test? Okay. I mean, that's where I'm at with this. And I think that many coaches are now, to be fair, sometimes you can be a victim of your own smarts because you think you're so smart that you don't have to adjust for anything. I wonder if that was Jimbo Fisher. You could maybe tell me if you think he's just not smart or if you think he was so successful that he didn't feel like he ever had to adjust.
I think there are 2 different kinds of intelligence. I think there is just an IQ. Anybody can pass an IQ test or pass. Anybody can succeed or fail in an IQ test. I think there's something different with being able to process quickly. And I think that Joe Milton may score 150 on an IQ test. I don't know. But I think the process quickly is troublesome. I think the process quickly also has to be there for play callers. So I would want a guy that I know can process quickly and be able to get the play out. So that would be a monster factor for me. By the way, Zach Arnett fired at Mississippi State. Why? Because Texas A&M made a change. And much like Tennessee before the 2009 season, after the 2008 season, they want to get ahead of the curve. Remember, Lane Kiffin was flirting with Washington, which is why Tennessee fired Philip Fulmer in the middle of the season. We've got more teams on. If you can run down the rest of the teams on our power rankings. And then I want to say something about the passing of a friend of mine. So if you can give us the teams that you round out the SEC power rankings.
Yes, Zach Arnett fired. That was a firing game on Saturday because Texas A&M blew out Mississippi State. Interestingly enough, I don't know if Zach Arnett got a fair shake. He was in a difficult situation after the Mike Leach thing, but that's going to be interesting to see. So moving forward, so we have Texas A&M at 8, Kentucky at 9. Kentucky is Kentucky. They are as predictable as anything. By the way, Texas A&M, look at Mark Stoops. South Carolina at 10. They could get to a bowl game. They got Kentucky and Clemson at home to close out the year. Arkansas, number 11. I think Sam Pittman is the next guy to get the axe in the SEC. I don't know when, don't know how quickly, but I think Sam Pittman is going to be done soon. Florida at number 12. Billy Napier should get the axe, but he's not going to get the axe because people want to hold that recruiting class together for a year. Mississippi State at 13 and Vanderbilt at 14.
Yep, I really don't have any argument from that point forward. I would still I know this sounds crazy, but well, I can't even make that argument. How do you lose to Missouri like that? The A&M change will certainly affect some young men's decision about where they go to college. As let's talk a little bit of recruiting here, and then I want to share a personal note. So, who does Tennessee have a chance on now that A&M has made a move, you think, Caleb?
So there are some guys that. So Cameron McKell is one of the last remaining targets in the cycle. He was down to Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Georgia, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M fires Jimbo Fisher. Tennessee, if they upset Georgia this weekend, could we say that maybe Tennessee has a chance with him?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Terry Bussey, a 5-star. He's an athlete. He was committed to A&M, but I mean, look, we're talking about a guy that you could easily flip now after what happened. He could play receiver or defensive back. DeBron Gatling is a 3-star. I don't know where he'll end up going, but the high title ones are Cameron McKell and Michael. I don't know if you pronounce his name, how you pronounce his last name, and Terry Bussey, who's already committed to Texas A&M. Walter Nolan is the 5-star, and we don't know what's going to happen with him. And also, Raymond Cottrell has already entered the transfer portal for Texas A&M.
Okay, so here we go. There's going to be a lot of A&M players to take advantage of as Tennessee moves forward, and there will be some transfers. Walter Nolan is the easiest to point to because he has ties and played at Powell High School, the home of the mighty Panthers, where I went to school. But it's not as if he grew up and was raised in East Tennessee, so I don't think there's as strong a ties there. It's kind of like just a stopover, like a travel nurse. So I don't know that it's a huge tie to East Tennessee, but there is somewhat of a tie there. Powell High School head coach Matt Lowe should do some recruiting for the Vols. Didn't do much to get him to Tennessee in the first place, but we'll see if he can do something for Walter Nolan now.